Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 11, Chapter 10, texts 32 and 33. This is one of those yavat tavat verses. As long as this, then that. As long as the living entity thinks that the modes of material nature have separate existences, he will be obliged to take birth in many different forms and will experience varieties of material existence. Therefore, the living entity remains completely dependent on fruitive activities under the modes of nature. Purport. The word guna, vaishamyam, indicates forgetfulness of Lord Krishna, which causes one to see material varieties as separate states of existence. The living entity, being attracted to material varieties and having faith in them, is forced to experience these varieties in different material bodies, such as those of demigods, pigs, businessmen, insects, and so on. According to the Karma Mimamsa philosophers, there is no transcendental living entity who is in the background of all existence. Boo. They accept material variety as the final reality. However, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the actual basis of everything. Everything is within him, and he is within everything. A pure devotee of the Lord sees Krishna everywhere and sees all of the variegated modes of nature as the potency of Lord Krishna. One who does not see Lord Krishna will certainly see material variegatedness as the supreme reality. Such vision is called maya, or gross illusion, and is similar to the vision of an animal. Paratantriyam means one will remain caught in the web of fruitive activities unless one gives up the superficial separatist vision. I think I'm going to spend a little time with this before going on to the next. Separatist vision is a term that's used in Kapila Dev's teachings. Bina pratak. Bina pratak, separated, or separatist. Here's one of the places where that is found. In chapter 29 of Kapila Dev's teachings, Canto 3, Devahuti says, and I'm keeping it simple, I get it, the goal is devotional service, and devotional service is pure, but what if one's consciousness is not pure? Can one still engage in devotional service if one's consciousness is not pure? And Kapila Dev says, sure. And then you'll have mixed devotional service, mixed with the modes and the three modes. And then without the influence of the modes is transcendental to the modes. Devotional service is transcendental mode, so that's pure devotional service, Shuddha Bhakti. So in Kapila Dev's description of devotional service influenced by or contaminated by, under the influence of the mode of ignorance, pratak, pratak bina. One sees, with a separatist mentality, same language, with the separatist mentality, the devotional service is to be utilized by one to achieve a mode of ignorance end, like defeating one's enemies or bringing harm to others who are your enemies. Pratak bina. And a similar term is those who are influenced by the mode of passion. They want to gain further dominion over material nature, some aspects of material nature. So that's the same as what's being said here. Seeing these manifestations as separate. And that separate or separatist mentality is the fruitive activity realm. This is activity, even Vedic activity, prescribed duties activity, not the unregulated people that are less than human, but human that are following the codes of the Vedas for the purpose of getting something, fruitive work. And one of the questions devotees like to ask is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Which comes first, the influence of the modes or fruitive activity, or fruitive activity and the influence of the modes? And it's not exactly one is the cause of the other, although one can describe like that. The modes are influencing the living entity, and thus the living entity engages in fruitive activity. One can look like that. One can speak like that and understand like that. Or more fundamentally, if one sees oneself separate from the Supreme Lord, one is going to see material nature as separate from the Supreme Lord, as if there's two existences, or multiple existences. There's something outside of the Supreme Lord, and that something outside of the Supreme Lord is a separate entity. And I interact with that separate entity without any regard, without the requirement or the consciousness of seeing things in relation to the Supreme Lord. And that's material consciousness, and that's what's being spoken of here. I'll read again. Guna Vaishamyam indicates forgetfulness of Lord Krishna, which causes, so there's the cause and then there's the effect, which causes one to see material varieties as separate states of existence. So the root, the cause, is turning attention away from Krishna, or seeing a forgetfulness of Krishna. Closing your eyes and Krishna goes away. Krishna doesn't go away by closing your eyes. Or the sun doesn't go away because it's night. Just something in between you and the sun, so you can't see the sun. The sun doesn't go away. Similarly, the relation between the living entity and Krishna is eternally there. But if one becomes forgetful of it, one will see in darkness. You turn away from the light and you'll see shadow. And in that darkness condition, the entities, matter or living, they're separate entities. So say it the other way. If one becomes relieved of that forgetfulness of Krishna, what's the state of consciousness? One sees all things in relation to Krishna. And one sees Krishna. And one sees oneself. It's full. Like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yata gyasasi sam tatrinu yat samshaya maya sakta manarparta yogam yunjan vadashaya asamshayam samagram mam. you can know me in full, samagram, without a doubt. That the knowing Krishna in full is Krishna. Everything, there's nothing separate from Krishna. Everything is from Krishna, thus Krishna's. And material nature is Krishna's, and it moves according to the indication of Krishna. Krishna doesn't have to lift a pinky. Just material nature moves under his supervision, just by his desire. We can't do that. Because we can't do that doesn't mean Krishna cannot do that. We want something done, we have to work. That's fruitive work. You do something to get something. So Krishna doesn't have fruitive work. He doesn't do something to get something, he just desires. And his energies move, including material energy and so many subdivisions of the material energy. The material energy moves under the indication of Krishna. If one forgetfulness of Krishna is there, one doesn't see that. So then one just sees separate entities. That's the point. Forgetfulness of Krishna causes one to see material varieties as separate states of existence. The living entity being attracted to material varieties and having faith in them is forced to experience these varieties in different material bodies. So the force is to get different bodies, and then once the bodies are there, then the design of the bodies is that one will see things the way that one sees things. A human will see, and a dog will see, and a bird will see, and a tree will... every living entity will have a different sense of what's out there, depending upon, and even from one human to another human, or one animal to another animal. Perception is within the mind, and it's going to be according to the body that's awarded. Sadasad yoni janmasu, Bhagavad Gita says. The circumstances of our life are determined by our past free will choices. We create our own destiny, in other words, and our experience of that destiny is also, it's supervised by Krishna, but fruitive activity means, it's the fundamental part, it's important. The fundamental part is they're seen as separate because of forgetfulness of Krishna. And then one engages with things, objects, other entities, those other separate entities, according to my conception of what happiness is. We want happiness. Nothing wrong with that. Happiness in forgetfulness of Krishna, that's karma. Activities pursuing happiness in forgetfulness of Krishna, that's karma. That's the default. It's a diseased condition. Or when one contracts a disease by, using Prabhupada's phrase, by some infection, you contract a disease. And there's modes of nature, varieties of diseases. Infected by the modes, we see, we experience, we do in a diseased state. Then there's different philosophers, karma mimamsa philosophers. Who are those guys, the karma mimamsa philosophers? They're atheists. You know, a true karma mimamsa philosopher is a fundamental atheist. The fundamental atheist says there's no supreme. I mean, they can't answer certain questions, but their fundamental idea is there's only one thing. What's that? There's material nature and the laws governing material nature, and there's no supreme. Supposing you propose that there's a Supreme, all right, but the Supreme has to give reward according to karma, so that means karma is above the Supreme. So Supreme is karma. If you want to go down the path of there's an Ishwar of karma, but that Ishwar is obliged by the laws of karma. So just do good work. You don't have to worship anybody or serve anybody. You just do good work according to the codes of the Vedas, and that's it. That's how you're supposed to understand the Vedas. Do good work. And everything will be nice. You'll enjoy this life, and you'll go to a nice place in your next life. And no worries about the Supreme. It's an atheistic philosophy. One of the answers they don't have to the following question is, all right, how did the laws of nature come into being? And where, for that matter, where's material nature come into being? And the answer is, don't ask that question. It just is. You say God is supreme, we say material nature is supreme. Where does God come from? You say he's primordial. We say material nature and the laws governing nature are primordial. That's God. End of discussion. There's nothing above material nature and the laws of nature. That's the source of everything. Everything is governed by that. That's God. That's worshipable. Material nature and the laws governing material nature. So do good work. It's atheistic. Fundamentally atheistic. It's not a new idea. I mean, it's prevalent in modern science. There's material nature and the laws governing material nature, and that's it. The emphasis there is atomic theory. That's another one of the atheistic theories, but it's also there's no Supreme. In Karma Mimamsa, there's no Supreme. There's varieties of atheistic theories. These are products, specifically, Prabhupada explains, these are products of the age of Kali. Meaning, before Kali Yuga, these teachings were not so prevalent, but they became more prevalent after Krishna's departure. When Kali Yuga begins, they became quite prevalent. Now, they existed before Krishna's departure. They existed before, it's just they're being distorted further and further. Krishna spoke Karma Mimamsa philosophy to Nanda Maharaj as an argument why you don't have to worship Indra. Just do good work. Interesting. Krishna is the actual basis of everything. Everything is within him, and he is within everything, which is not possible from the material point of view. We can be in this room and not simultaneously outside the room or in all rooms. We can't do that. But Krishna can do that, no problem, by his inconceivable potencies. Okay. One who does not see Lord Krishna will certainly see material variegatedness as the supreme reality. It's illusion, or it's atheism, or such vision is called Maya, gross illusion. And the result, fruitive activities, kijai. Because if there is no controller, I'll just do things because it gets me things. Fruitive activity. And how to become free from tendency? Krishna has to appear. And initially, steps towards Krishna appearing is offering the fruits of your activity to the Supreme. And that can mean different things to different people, but it's a principle. And gradually, as consciousness becomes elevated, that was discussed in earlier verses, by the process of sacrifice, gradually the modes of nature are lifted. As the modes of nature are lifted, capacity for knowledge becomes greater. As the capacity for knowledge becomes greater, then one can be more clear what the target is of the Supreme, offering not just the fruits of activity, but offering everything to the Supreme. Gradual elevation. Text 33. The conditioned soul, who remains dependent on fruitive activities under the material modes of nature, will continue to fear me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, since I impose the results of one's fruitive activities. Those who accept the material concept of life, taking the variegatedness of the modes of nature to be factual, devote themselves to material enjoyment and are therefore always absorbed in lamentation and grief. Not a pretty picture, but it's true. Purport, 2 paragraphs. The living entity is bound in the network of illusion, but although he can understand that he is dependent upon superior powers, he does not want to serve the Supreme Lord. He thus becomes filled with fear of life itself. Desiring material sense gratification, the living entity, like the demon Kamsa, always fears destruction of his material arrangement, remaining addicted to the flavors of material nature. Flavors means like the modes. One gradually sinks down into an irrational form of life. Paragraph. Maya has 2 potencies. The first covers the living entity, and the second throws him down into a hellish condition of life. When one is covered by Maya, one loses all power of discrimination, and Maya then throws such a fool into the darkness of ignorance. When one wrongly considers oneself to be independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, one becomes a worshipper of temporary material objects, hoping to enjoy material sense gratification, and as one grows older, one's life becomes filled with fear and anxiety. A conditioned soul considers himself to be the controller of his life, but since he does not have any actual controlling potency, his situation is contradictory and not at all pleasing. As all of one's material possessions are taken away by time, one becomes filled with lamentation. All in all, material life is truly abominable, and it is only because of dense illusion that we accept it as satisfactory. So unavoidably or invariably, the consideration of time appears again. It was in previous verses. And time is Krishna. Time is a Shakti, Kala Shakti. Time is something that moves matter unquestionably. I mean, not invisibly, but unquestionably. No one can stop time. Try it. You can't stop time. It keeps moving. Your clock may break, but time keeps moving. And what does time do? It brings things and it destroys things. And it keeps moving. Kala Chakra keeps moving and moving and moving, up to the point of total cosmic annihilation. But just even in the course of our lives, things come into being, things stay for some time, and things are taken away. And we're busy trying to assemble things so that the mind reads it as happiness, and then, sure enough, those things are going to be dismantled, or at least rearranged, and then we're busy trying to rearrange that rearrangement so that it looks like happiness instead of otherwise. And sometimes things just are arranged so they seem very fortunate, fortuitous. And that's another trick of Maya. And one of the features of illusion is we keep doing it anyways. I was sharing this during their japa retreat. This past weekend, we had a japa retreat in central New Jersey. When I was a kid, a few years ago, I was a kid, and one of the toys that I had was a Jack-in-the-Box. No, it's not the company that calls themselves Jack-in-the-Box. It was a little toy, and the little toy had a feature. The two features. You press a button and the lid pops open, and it's on a spring. Up comes this weird looking creature, entity, just spring with cloth over it, and he makes, at least the one that I had, made a sound, like a spooky sound. Blah, blah, blah. That was it. Then there you have a little crank in the back, and the Jack-in-the-Box goes back into the box. You put the lid down, and you press the button, and he does it again. Then you wind it, it comes back in the box, and you just keep, we would do that a whole bunch, again and again, and then the next day, and just like again and again. So material life is like that. It's a Jack-in-the-Box. Blah, and just keep doing it. And how foolish. One would think that one would put two and two together. It's like, that's a waste of time. There is another thing that's happiness, and it's not a Jack-in-the-Box. It's not doing it again and again, just rearranging what it may look like, and it may feel a little bit different over a period of time, but there's no satisfaction, there's no real happiness. There's no real happiness. So in fruitive activity, in fact, it's misery. In fact, it's a distraction from what real happiness is. And that's our situation. We're distracted by, or enamored by, as it's said in the purport here, objects that are seen in forgetfulness of Krishna to have their own separate existence, and we're trying to interact with those objects in such a way that happiness comes. But that's not a way to reach happiness. And we just keep doing it, and it keeps the living entity perpetually in bondage. And you can put a ribbon and a bow on it and fragrance it with some scented spray or something, but it's not what real happiness is. The message of this chapter is, it's, as we mentioned, adverse fruitive activities. There's a whole chapter in 5th canto, adverse fruitive activities. They're not favorable, they're adverse. They're unfavorable. But it's the default position that arises from forgetfulness of Krishna. Remedy? Remember Krishna. In principle, very simple. The difficulty is we're attached to the temporary. We're attached to seeing things separate from Krishna. We're attached. And we've been doing it for a long time. How many lifetimes, no one can say. Too many. And it's a deeply ingrained tendency. So it doesn't go away so quickly. Therefore, sadhana that's meant to awaken remembrance of Krishna and clear away the forgetfulness. And therefore, naturally, there's so many reminders in Scripture about the temporary nature of and insufficient solution to life's problems through fruitive activities, even the good ones. It doesn't mean don't do good things. It just means don't consider that that's the goal, be-all and end-all of life. That's a big mistake. So how fortunate to have transcendental knowledge. And how many people are availing themselves to transcendental knowledge? According to Bhagavad Gita, and according to our practical experience, not so many. Manushyanam sahasreshu, kaschat yatati siddhaye, etc. Now, it's growing. It's growing by the strength of bhakti. That bhaktas who are carrying bhakti, attraction for that which is the healthy and wholesome condition of the soul is growing, will grow and continue to grow. What's essential for it to grow and continue to grow is those who are practitioners of bhakti, receiving and giving. Receiving the mercy of the life of devotion from those who are living it, and having received it, then giving it to others. In this way, devotion will grow. I'll say one last thing. This is on behalf of, this is a marketing message from Vaisheshika Prabhu. He sent me, I've probably sent to a lot of people, his idea of a goal of how many Bhagavatam sets will be distributed in the world this year. I forget his magic number, but he has a magic number that in the course of 5 years, the number will be such and such number. Because he believes, and it's true, goals are powerful. It's one of his slogans or mottos. Goals are powerful. If you don't have a goal, it's hard to reach it. If you have a goal, then you make a plan to reach it. It's true. As soon as you set a goal, then you mean it, then the intelligence starts to work how to reach it. So I don't know what the system is here in Houston, but Bhadra Purnima comes after Janmashtami, and there's plenty of time between now and Bhadra Purnima to establish a goal and work towards the goal. And working towards the goal means that transcendental knowledge will be extended further into the world of darkness. This is Kali Yuga, and it is getting wilder and weirder and darker in many ways, without listing, many ways, darker and darker. So what to do? That question was asked by the sages to Sutta, and the answer given by Sutta was, Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is for Vaishnavas who to receive the message of the Bhagavatam and give the message of the Bhagavatam. So whoever is hearing this class, those persons that want to help humanity deal with the darker and darker and darker features of the age of Kali, get behind, not just leave it up to the book distribution coordinator. I mean, they'll have to do what they have to do, but think of ways, creative ways, other ways than what you've been doing, and just keep going. And find ways to see that Bhagavatam is, sets of the Srimad Bhagavatam are distributed here in Houston. And, within the community and somehow, some way, and increase it. Why? Because it'll bring light into this dark age. It'll help people become freed from the illusion that fruitive activities is going to bring them happiness, and the misery that comes along with that mistake, and it can mitigate all of that. The Bhagavatam has that power. It's had that power in our lives, of course, proportionately in different degrees, but the power, the potency is there. This 11th canto, Uddhava Gita, is one such example. It's a really nice section of the Bhagavatam. It's deep and powerful. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. Do we have a microphone? Here's a microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Here in the translation of text 33, it says, the conditioned soul who remains dependent on fruitive activities under the material modes of nature will continue to fear me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, since I impose the results of one's fruitive activity. So I am not really clear on that why living entity is fearful of Supreme, because he imposes.
There are different ways of understanding that. One of them is what is generated by my fruitive activities is impermanent. It's going to be taken from me. One becomes afraid. Now, it may be just a general sense of fear, but where's that fear coming from? It's loss of something that I value that's generated by fruitive activities. So it's not. So the concept is not necessarily fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but fear of loss of that which is temporary, and behind that is the Personality of Godhead, as in the feature of time, whatever it is, it's going to be taken. That which is temporary, generated by fruitive activities, is going to be taken by time. It's generated and it's taken. So behind is Personality of Godhead. Clear? Yesterday, somebody shared something with me. I live with this nagging fear. As a responsible, nice Vaishnava, I live with this nagging fear. Supposing something happens, and I'm no longer able to take care of my family. I have sufficient assets, but supposing something happens, and then my family is not going to be cared for. I'm not anxious for more, but I'm fearful of losing what I have by some, I don't know what, cause. And it stays with me. It's a debilitating emotion. So it's not, that person is not saying I'm afraid of Krishna. But it's afraid of Krishna, because Krishna, the answer was, Krishna will take care of you. Who's taking care of you now? Who was taking care of you before you started working and taking care of your family? Same person, and supposing something happens, Krishna will take care of you. Now, the agency through which Krishna will take care of you may be so many things. But ultimately, as Krishna will take care of you. Maybe the community, maybe your insurance policy, it may be so many maybes. But it's not our clever arrangements that's going to take care of our dependence when circumstances no longer are in place that they're there today, that's going to take care of my dependence tomorrow. Because time is going to take it away. But who is the maintainer now and who is the maintainer then? So we make practical arrangements, but living in fear is not. Fear of a loss that comes from generating something from fruitive activity. Is that clear? Okay. Okay. That's it for the morning. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.